Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear viewers to the show. Think about it. As we always mention to you, and inshallah, I hope you always remember that if you do like the content of this show, information as we can in whatever capacity and way that we can, and hopefully give a little bit of education and awareness and help people think about it. Today, we're going to start off with 3 stories, short ones hopefully, and ones that have a good moral for everyone to understand, which will extract the topic of today. The first story is of a child, a young boy by the name of Ibrahim. Now, Ibrahim is 4 years old, and he just came back from school. So he's studying in junior kindergarten or senior kindergarten, and he comes back home. His mom goes and picks him up from school. The school is right close to their house, so it's a walking distance. And Ibrahim is talking to his mom about how wonderful his day went and how great it was. And then he mentions that one of his friends has a toy that Ibrahim also wants to have and wants, to play with. So Ibrahim's mom says when your dad comes home, he'll bring the car home from work too. Once the car is home, either your dad or I can take you to the store so you can get that toy. And so Ibrahim's all excited and happy. When Ibrahim comes home, now what is Ibrahim doing? You probably guessed it. He's waiting for his dad to come home. Now this is a dependency just so Ibrahim has access to a car, which he can't drive, by the way. Now it depends on his mom and his dad, even when the car is home, for him to go to the store. To get to the store, there's another dependency. Does the store have the toy in stock? Does it not have the toy in stock? Does he get the toy? And even if he picks the toy off the shelf, another dependency is that his parents will actually pay for it. So take out their credit card or cash and actually pay for the toy. These different stages are all things that are not really in Ibrahim's control. This is a phenomenon called interdependence, which basically means you have to wait for something or someone to do something just so you could get your job done. Ibrahim's goal is to play with the toy. How can that happen? When the car is home. Dad has the car. And when the car is home, it doesn't mean if the car is home he can play with the toy. The toy is not there. Someone will take him to the store. That's another dependency. Dependency number 2. When they get to the store, it depends if the toy is in stock or not. Now, this is not even in the control of the parents or the car. That's the 3rd dependency. The 4th dependency is whether, if the toy is in stock, how much does it cost? Are the parents okay with buying it? That's the 4th dependency. After these 4 dependencies are taken care of and catered to, our friend Ibrahim can play with his toy when he gets home. Story number 2. You have a student who's in 12th grade, all right? And right now, by the looks of the year and the month that we're in, this is the time when students start getting acceptances from universities, they start getting letters, conditional offers, unconditional offers, so on and so forth. Now, if a student gets an offer from a university and they have to wait for some other paperwork to come, an admission letter to come, or something to happen, the student can make their move into paying the tuition fee. Once they've paid the tuition fee, what's going to happen? The student will get an unconditional offer. That means that now the student is enrolled into that course, into that university. So, let's say that parents of this young person, all right, they have money in an RESP account, or they have money that's saved up for the child, or whatever the case is. And let's say that taking out such a bulk amount of money or arranging funds is going to take a few days for the parents to do in order for them to pay that tuition fee, at least the amount that's required for the unconditional offer to come. Now, this young man or young girl, all right, is now depending on their parents to get the funds so they could pay for the tuition fee, and so the university can send them an unconditional offer. And once the unconditional offer comes, this young student can start preparing and planning to make a move to another city, or whether it's in the same city and how much of a commute they have to make, but start buying stationery items, books, and different things that they need for their university course. This story itself has a few layers and moments and phases of interdependence as well. So because something has to happen in order for you to be able to do something. That's what interdependence is. It's the same thing with a job interview. When people go and give job interviews, Now, before they can start going and buying suits or going and buying clothes or buying things that would be good in their office, they have to wait until the reply comes. What if the reply doesn't really come in your favor? What if the reply does come in your favor? You don't know. You're in an interim moment where you're heavily depending on what the answer is going to be. A moment of interdependence. Interdependence is actually a very big phenomenon that is found in the world of business. Now, this phenomena can explain a lot of the issues we have in society and how things operate and work. So, before we get into that, I hope you understand what interdependence means. It means you have to wait for something to happen in order for you to do what you have to or you want to do. Ibrahim wants to play with a toy. What does Ibrahim have to wait for? Dad, come home with the car. The car is the important part. First dependency. Secondly, mom and dad willing to take him to the store. Second dependency. Third, the toy is available at the store. Hopefully, fingers crossed, inshallah, it's there. Third dependency. Fourth dependency is mom and dad say, okay, let's buy it, or they end up purchasing it. That's the fourth dependency. After these dependencies are met, after everything is clear and good to go, our friend Ibrahim can finally do what he wants to do. That is play with the toy. Similarly, in businesses, the concept of interdependence looks at three industries of businesses. The first industry is called primary. Primary industries are basically industries that extract raw materials and raw goods. For example, if IKEA, a company that sells furniture, sells its furniture to its customers, there's a huge process behind it by the wood that they get for the tables, the beds, and the chairs, and all the different things that they have, all the furniture basically. The primary industry is responsible for that person who's the lumberjack or that person who works in the lumber industry, where they go and they cut trees down. So first trees are cut down. After trees are cut down, they're built into logs or slabs, or whatever the case is, and they're sent to factories. Factories then process everything and make sure that things are manufactured. So primary, you extract. When you're manufacturing, that's called secondary industry. So that's the second industry. Primary, extraction of raw materials. Secondary, manufacturing them. And then you have the third industry, which you would find in IKEA. Somebody who's standing there who's saying, this is a very nice bed, you should buy this bed. This bed has memory foam and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's a very sturdy bed and it has oak. That's the type of wood, or whatever, or birch, or whatever the case is. And they try to sell you. That is a service industry, which is called tertiary. So the third industry is called tertiary industry. In tertiary, they deal with services, basically banking, sales, teaching, doctors, hospitals, all these things. All of them are a part of the tertiary industry, where you have services that are exchanged, services that are given. But it all starts with the primary industry. Even if you take a look at a hospital where a doctor works, you might say, what relationship does a doctor have with the primary industry? How does it go all back to the primary industry? Well, if the building wasn't built, the hospital wouldn't be there. If the hospital wasn't there, the doctor wouldn't get work in that area. Now, for that building to stand up, you need wood, you need iron or metal or whatever kind of, bronze, or I'm not really finding the word at the moment, but whatever kind of materials that they need to build that building, they required it. Wood, metal, you have levers, cleavers, bricks, all these different things, cement, and everything that's involved. Where do you get these from? Now, even though if wooden slabs and pillars were made, they were made by manufacturing. That means the secondary industry is where you could trace that back to. Where did the secondary industry get the wood to make pillars? Where did they get the metal to mold and turn and CNC, do laser stuff on it to change the shape of it? Where did they get the material for the cement to be able to make that mix so they could take it to the site where the building is going to be built? It goes to the primary industry, the people who extracted the raw goods. How does this all connect with problems? How does this all connect with the issues that we have today? All of these actually affect our standard of living. What do I mean by that? Stay tuned and you will find out. Think about it. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the show. Think about it. We left off talking about three types of industries in business. And we talked about how they connect to the idea of interdependence. So, the three industries of business: primary, extracting raw material; secondary, manufacturing and making them into something; and tertiary, which means service, providing the service. These are the three industries of business. And yes, they depend on each other, thus interdependence. Now, looking at this, you can also take a look at how countries are rated. When I say rated, now rated is a very important word that I'm using over here. I'm not saying defined. I'm not saying are. I'm using the word rated. Rated basically means that we rate a country because of its standard of living. We rate a country based on what type of industries are available there. Countries that only have primary industries where goods are extracted, but they don't have anything to manufacture them at times, or they don't have anything to provide services at times, is known to be an underdeveloped country. Thus, you have countries that have a lot of natural resources, but they're not considered to be developed countries. They're considered underdeveloped. Before the 1930s, in fact, up until the 1980s, in fact, a country in the Middle East known as Saudi Arabia, which is a very holy country for most people who are Muslims, because we go there to perform pilgrimage, because the two holy cities, Mecca al-Mukarramah and Medina al-Munawwara, are there. We go there to perform the short pilgrimage, which is Umrah. We go there to perform the big pilgrimage, which is Hajj. So, that's why these are important cities and, of course, an important country for Muslims. However, this country is very much known because of the fact that it has a very big natural resource that the entire world thrives on, and that is oil. Oil is something that Saudi Arabia is famous for and infamous for as well. Infamous is a more negative way, but whatever the case is, that's a conversation for another time. So, this country was known to be underdeveloped for a long time. It's because they did have a primary industry where extraction of the raw material, extraction of the natural resource was available, but manufacturing it or other manufacturing situations, the tertiary industry, was basically non-existent until they actually found investment coming into the country as well. Until people who took the primary resource that they had from their primary industry and actually did something with it. And then benefits started coming Saudi Arabia's way. Similarly, you will find stories of other countries that have had a lot of natural resources, and either they've been subject to colonialism, either they've been subject to being conquered, invasions, or simple business as well, trade and export and import and so on and so forth. Well, not much import, but more export. These types of countries that you might have heard of, I don't need to sit down and label them all for you, were all regarded as underdeveloped countries for the longest time because they might have had a primary industry. They didn't have any manufacturing or services, a tertiary industry available in that country. These countries did their best after time to actually educate themselves and then form an area, form a place where they had factories, they had branch plants, outlets, and different types of companies and organizations open up shop on their land. And so they started manufacturing things. They started making things. And when you start manufacturing things, you need to be able to sell them, do business, talk to people, provide a service. Thus, the service industry started growing as well. Some of those countries meet a certain criteria, which means a certain standard. Of course, if you go to a restaurant and the waiter brings you the food in, let's say, his hands instead of a bowl or a plate, and he's bringing you some rice and says, "Here's your rice, sir, please eat." You're going to say, what is wrong with these people? Sanitation issues. I'm never coming to this restaurant again. But the restaurant does have the food, it does have everything, but the standard of their service is not so good. Those countries that end up having manufacturing, that means secondary industries, and end up having services, that means tertiary industries, but they're not up to the par, they're not experienced, are known to be developing countries. And then we come to developed countries. The first world countries is what they say. So we have first world, second world, and third world. We talked about third world, which are underdeveloped countries. They only rely on a primary industry if they have one, or they pretty much don't have anything, and God help them, and we must all come together in unison in this world. We live in a global village, we have to help each other out. But that is a conversation for another time. However, primary industries alone do not qualify you to be a first world country. if you start manufacturing things, if you start having a secondary industry, now it depends on the standard of your work. Everyone can be a teacher. That doesn't mean everyone will be a good teacher. That doesn't mean everybody will be a bad teacher. That doesn't mean everybody should be a teacher. But everybody has the capacity of exporting or telling people information that they have, giving directions, explaining a point, scaffolding, illustrating, teaching. Everyone can do it, but there will always be somebody who could do it better. There will always be somebody who could do it worse as well. That difference between the level of service, the level of work, the standard of it, actually gives a person, an entity, a company, a country, a reputation, or, as I said before, a rating. So, countries are rated based on their industries, and countries are rated based on their services, so on and so forth. Now, we come to first world countries. First world countries are countries that usually, developed countries, are usually countries that rely more on the tertiary industry. That means services. Their services are impeccable, remarkable. Main industries and main things they have are related to the tertiary industry. They do have secondary industries, they do have primary industries as well, but they're not heavily reliant on them. They want to make sure that they could do a lot in their tertiary area, because that's what brings about education, that's what brings about standard of living. So this is how basically people classify a first world country, second world country, and a third world country. Hopefully that was something, if it was new for you, great. If it was not new and you knew it, then I just refreshed it for you. So you're welcome for that too. Going on to the next point, how does this affect life? So, these industries depend on each other. Let's say there is a city, or well, the country Brazil. Let's say Rio de Janeiro or Brasilia. They have a lot of forests there. That means they have a lot of trees there. Let's say the people go there to get their lumber, get their wood, so they could manufacture it, so that they could make furniture out of it and sell it in stores. Now, for example, there's a very big furniture company called The Brick over here in Canada. The Brick is like IKEA or somewhere else, but I think it's more local. I haven't seen it in another country. But anyways, so The Brick, the furniture they get is from a factory, let's say. And that factory is available in the United States, let's say. It is based in the United States. That factory that builds the furniture gets all of its wood from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Now let's say that so much wood has been cut that deforestation has happened. A depletion. That means resources have fallen down. And that means Brazil cannot cut the same amount of trees or provide the same amount of wood to the factory in the US. If they can't provide the same amount of wood to the factory in the US cannot provide the same amount of furniture to the Brick in Canada. And if the Brick in Canada doesn't have enough furniture, guess what? It's not going to be able to sell people that much furniture anymore. So their sales are going to fall. Interdependence. And this is how, when they have less of something, the prices go up. Because now it's expensive. If you were getting 1,000, let's say, sofas that were coming from the US and you were paying $100 for each, you were making $100,000. But you had to pay the US $100,000. So you could get those sofas to come. And then you could sell those sofas for $300 a piece, $400 a piece, and make your profit. But you are still sending the US $100,000, even though the US cannot make that many sources. And you're like, why am I paying them more? It's because the US has increased its charge because they're getting less wood now. That means wood is high in demand. A lot of people want it, but it's low in supply because of the primary industry, because of Brazil and Rio de Janeiro. Blame it on them. But they're going to say that deforestation, our forests are dying. And so, by the time that furniture reaches the Brick in Canada, you and I, who could go and buy that sofa for $300 2 months ago, now go and find it for $700. And we're like, what is going on? This is a crazy hike. What's going on? Thus, you could imagine that when countries, usually there are three, I can give you 3 examples. Number one is we have pandemics, diseases, and different things that cause restrictions and cause interdependence to hit and causes an inflation of prices and things and affects businesses and people. For example, COVID, the pandemic that took over in early 2020, at least in Canada, and kind of ruined everybody's lives for a long time, and we were thinking about the new normal, so on and so forth. What did COVID do to restaurants? Restaurants were not allowed to have people dine in anymore. Now, let's say there was a restaurant that did not have the option of home delivery for food. They were a restaurant that worked on dine-in. They were a small restaurant. They weren't registered on Skip the Dishes or Uber Eats or DoorDash or Food Panda. They were a normal family business. All of a sudden, people are not coming to their shop because it's COVID. They don't want to go outside or catch the disease. It's a high alert, red flag and red alert situation going on. They're not going to the restaurant anymore. The restaurant doesn't deliver. So guess what? They have all this material, all this stuff, but they're not making any money. But they're spending money on the ingredients, the doughs, the rice, the food, and everything that they have to make. They're giving salaries to the people who stand at the cash register, who are waiters, who are chefs and cooks and all those people. But now they're giving money away, not getting any. So interdependence is what they're focusing on. Interdependence means they depend on customers coming in so they could have sales, so they could pay their people. If customers aren't coming in anymore, they can't pay their people anymore. They can't pay their people anymore. Layoffs, they have to say goodbye, sorry, we can't pay you anymore. 4, 5, 6 months pass in the same scenario, they can't afford to pay the rent of their shop anymore. They can't afford to have that business alive anymore, thrive. That's why you and I heard about a lot of companies and restaurants and cafes, particularly the food industry, closing when COVID had hit. It's because they couldn't pay their dues because they were interdependent on other people to actually make money. And then you have another scenario, which is political issues. So if there's a political crisis going on and countries don't get along well with each other, of course they're not going to help each other. The same example I gave you of Brazil to the US to the Canada, basically about furniture and stuff. So from Brazil to the US to Canada, you would have wood that would go and become furniture, furniture that would come into the brick in Canada and be sold. Let's say there's a political issue. People don't get along very well. The governments of Brazil, the US, and Canada are not seeing eye to eye anymore. Do you think Brazil is going to be sending their wood to America now? No, they're not. If they're not sending wood to America, America is not manufacturing furniture. If America is not manufacturing furniture, the brick is empty. If the brick is empty, they're going to have a hard time making money and doing business. So whatever stock they will have from the time when things were good and the things that they got, automatically the prices are going to rise because they have to pay the rent. The rent hasn't changed. They have to pay salaries to their employees. That hasn't changed. They have to pay for delivery. Maybe they have trucks that go deliver and stuff. Maybe they have cars and trucks. They have to pay insurance for that every month. So their expenses haven't changed, but the money coming in and the business that they were doing definitely has. Interdependence. So then their prices hike. It's the same thing with natural resources. Probably why right now in Canada, oil prices, gas prices have hiked because of certain issues that we hope, inshallah, will be solved in the future. And we hope that everybody's okay, but that's a discussion for another time as well. Then we have something called corporate advantage. It's when a business is not being affected at all, but there might be a political issue, there might be a disease, COVID, pandemic, something going on, but they're not facing any issues. But because everybody is, they fake it. That's called corporate advantage. They're like, oh yeah, because of this we have this and this and this, and our expenses have gone high, so they increase the price of their services. They increase the price of their products. They increase the price of whatever it is. That is taking a Mac. Taking a Mac means you might be faking it, but you're increasing things. For example, I hate to beat around the bush and I hate to be bearer of bad news, but that's probably what's happening with the housing market. Anyways, that's something that probably a real estate agent, a mortgage agent, or somebody who's a broker within the housing industry can properly tell you and explain it to you, inshallah. So, with that, how does it all affect people? It affects people immensely. What can we do to solve these issues? Yes, there is a solution. Because we're depending on so many countries to do things. Another thing that rates a country to be developed is the fact that they have a lot of local businesses. So guess what? Canada, Pakistan, India, US, China, Japan, they all need to start having more local businesses. If they have those, with that, they need to start looking for places that are secondary and tertiary and primary within their own country. That will make them self-regulating, self-sustaining, and self-reliant. Once that happens, if on an international level there's a problem going on, it won't affect them that much. So, support your local businesses. That's what I am saying. Support your local farmers. That's what I am saying. Support your local people who have shops, mobile shops, computer shops, whatever the case is, grocery stores. Local ones, please support them. Because big, massive companies that are international, they're making money and everything is good. We don't wish them any harm or anything. We hope that they thrive and make more profit and success and do whatever they can, but not at the expense of corporate advantage and not at the expense of people's livelihoods. And of course, that might affect people negatively. So, local businesses, support. That's about it. Today's topic was interdependence, and I hope that you walked away with some information. As always, think about it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.